The kids I used to babysit knew about the Boogie-Man when I was younger. I was scared of my attic. I couldn't look at it, I couldn't think about it. It gave me a weird, scary feeling. It wasn't always like that, and after a few years I stopped thinking about it. But recently I spoke to the kids that live in my old house, and what they told me gave me chills. Before I tell you what those kids told me, I will tell you my own story. Just to give you guys some background information. I grew up in a small village. None of you would probably know the place, because it's in Holland. My mom, my brother and I lived in this small house for 13 years. We were really happy there, and a lot of my greatest memories were made in that house. But it also had a creepy side to it. The previous owner died in the house, and that always gave me chills. The attic was the place that scared me the most. It was small and dark in there, but when my brother and I were younger we used the place to play in. My mother was a single mom, but we used to have a lot of toys and build our little empire in there. My brother built with his Lego, while I played with my dolls and stuffed animals. Nothing used to bother us. My brother was the first to get scared of the attic. He is 5 years older than I am, and he used to push me up the stairs first. You could say he used me as bait, lol. The reason for that was that my mom used to scare my brother with the story about the Boogie-Man. It wasn't scary to me at such a young age, but my brother was scared of the Boogie-Man. The story was that he used to live in the attic, and if he catches you, you would stay with him forever. When I grew older, my mom remarried. They expected a baby, and the attic couldn't be our playground anymore. Instead of a happy place, it became an even darker hole. And when I grew older, I got more scared of the attic. And the attic made more creepy noises than it ever did. Above my bedroom's door was a window. Through that window I could see the stairs to the attic and a bit of the darkness that lived there. It always gave me chills when I looked in that direction. I would hear noises upstairs even when everyone was downstairs in the living room. Stuff would move, weird sounds would be heard, and no one would believe me if I told them. Not my brother, not my parents, no one. One night I had a weird dream. In that dream I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom. I could see the wooden creaking stairs in front of me while brushing my teeth. Usually, I would see the window in our roof and the moonlight coming through. But this time, in my dream, I saw a creature standing tall in the stairway with its shining eyes. It made me feel uncomfortable. It was standing there, looking at me with that awful grin on its face. I was shocked and didn't know what to do. The weirdest part was its arms. It had long arms, and it looked like the creature could catch me. It had a creepy voice, but I can't remember what it said. I ran downstairs for what felt like an hour, and those arms were right behind me. I knew I would be safe if I reached the ground floor, but it was so hard to get there. When I finally was, I could hear the creature whisper, "I will see you next time, my dear toy." Every time I had this dream, I would wake up screaming and crying. And I never took a look at the attic ever again. I tried to ignore the noises, I tried to ignore the feeling of being watched. My blanket kept me safe, I guess. When we moved to another house in the same village, I felt relieved. I finally got away from the attic. I finally got away from the scary, uncomfortable feeling of being watched. If it was just this weird story, about the Boogie-Man, about the dream, I would have kept it to myself. It is in the past, huh? Well, when we moved, another family moved into my old house. They had 3 kids and they needed a babysitter. I was 13 years old and I wanted to earn some money, so I took the job. It was all fun and games in the beginning, playing with the kids, giving them their dinner, watching movies with them. But bedtime wasn't fun and games at all. They hated going to their beds. They didn't want to sleep in their room. They seemed scared. After a hard battle of getting them in their beds and after they finally fell asleep, the uneasy feelings from my childhood came back. I never looked at the stairs to the attic, and I even looked away from the stairs leading to the kids' bedrooms. It still made me feel weird, I guess. The family stayed there for a few years and I continued babysitting there. It was a great family and I could always bring some friends if I wanted to. They paid me well, also. After a few years they moved to a bigger house and I still came to babysit on the kids. I stopped doing that about 2 years ago, when I graduated. The woman's mother moved into their and my old house. Last week, there was a fire in the house. No one was harmed, but the house was destroyed. Well, almost. The woman who lived in the house got out in time, but the rooms were black and smelled like a bonfire. Only one room was unharmed, the attic. When I heard that news, I couldn't believe it. I was happy that the woman got out safe, but it gave me chills that the attic was intact. I saw one of the kids I used to babysit in the same week. He waved at me and came over. I asked him how his grandmother is after the fire, and he told me she was okay. She was sad because of all the damage, but she was happy to be alive. He asked me if I had heard the news about the attic, and I saw how uncomfortable he got. I told him it was just weird that the attic was perfectly fine, but that some things are a mystery. What he told me afterwards made me want to throw up. You know what's up there, don't you? He was watching you, and when you moved he was watching us. I told Nana to not close the attic because it would get mad. But she didn't listen. You know who did this, right? I felt dizzy and didn't know what to say. What? What do you mean, Greg? The Boogy-Man. He said you will be next. See, my dear. The second story. I just inherited a haunted house, and the ghosts want me to run a goddamn bed and breakfast in. Morning wood, am I right? I had reached for my crotch to get a little wake me up zazz going when I realized that something felt off. I opened my eyes. I was in the bedroom I'd inherited, but everything was wrong. The mattress had been moved to the other side of the room with me still in it, providing a full view of the cavernous space. Bare, sooty footprints led from the fireplace to where the mattress had originally been. Those prints then turned and proceeded to my mattress's current location before pacing the room, heading to the corner, proceeding 10 feet up the wall, coming back down, and stopping again by my bed. There, they simply disappeared, as though their owners had never left. Even more bizarre was the fact that the footprints transitioned in size. They started looking like adult treads, then slowly proceeded to the shape of a small child before growing larger again as they paced. They were over 2 feet long by the time they reached my bedside. The hair on my neck slowly rose. I wanted to cry, but that no rent thing limited my options to stay here. That's it. My list of options was just the one option. So that's why I live in a haunted house. I simply can't afford a better neighborhood. Okay, pal, this is how it's gonna be? I asked groggily as I tumbled out of bed. Do you really think I'm above pissing in your precious fireplace? Because surprise, I'm not. I should have considered the smell before I started, but I'm not usually running on all 5 cylinders before that first scoop of mayonnaise. Now the fireplace is muddy ash. Remember that next time you put your bare feet in it. I zipped up and headed out of the room. This is my house now, and we're living by my rules. That's how I learn not to piss off haunted house. I've got a question for you, I asked the man in the black trench coat on my front porch. How did I know you were at the door? I didn't hear a bell, but I knew you were there. Mr. Advocatus smiled that not-so-friendly smile. I'm not here to tell you how the house communicates with those held inside. He opened his omnipresent briefcase and pulled out a sheet of paper. Your great-aunt Mary has some requests for you. Okay, what the hell, I asked, taking the paper that I knew I would regret taking. Why didn't you just give me all the bad news at once yesterday? Because you might not have taken the house, he responded casually. Well, yes, there's a distinct possibility you might be very right. He was silent. You know I had a strange-ass night last night, don't you? He was silent. I sighed. Okay, what does my dead great-aunt Mary want me to do with this god-forsaken place? I asked as I looked over the paper. A select clientele will find their way to you. Your job is to extract a fair payment. I raised an eyebrow. That's it. Too good to be true, right? He responded brightly. Oh, and wear a different pair of pants when your guest arrives. I looked down. Goddamn morning wood. I spent the day trying to build a new routine. No longer my place of residence, the Corolla was now exclusively used for commuting to campus in town, where most of my classmates lived in the Bowden dorms. It was odd going into classrooms that were smaller than my new bedroom. I had no idea I mean, sure, I could have chosen not to let this houseguest in. But since I'd opened up at urine front in the war against my mansion, I didn't want to break any more rules than I had to at the moment. And when I found myself at the front door, again with no idea how I knew someone was waiting for me, the guy looked kind of okay. Sure, he was kind of scuzzy. Basically, he seemed like a guy who'd never changed his freshman year hygiene habits as he aged into his 40s. "Raymond Salach?" he asked from behind strands of greasy hair. "That's me," I answered, checking to make sure that I was wearing a pair of respectable jeans. "So, who are you, now?" "Call me Eagle," he responded with a gravelly voice. "You cool if I drink in the backyard?" he asked while holding up a six-pack of Cedar Mountain Ice. My eyes grew wide. "Where'd you find that?" "It's the only beer I've ever seen that sells for less than $4 a 12-pack. You can drink wherever you want if you're willing to share. Anyway, that's how I found out I have a backyard. It's gigantic and heads right down into the Androscoggin River. It's where Eagle showed me his pills. It's a win-win, my friend," he cooed unpleasantly. "You scout the girls. Freshmen will drink anything, and you don't need much Rohypnol to get the job done." He crushed his beer can, belched, then threw the trash at a bush, which he missed. Then he slid me a crisp $100 bill. "That's an advance. I'll pay for each girl you convince to meet me outside." He smiled, and I could see that he was missing several teeth. "I'll take care of the rest. I'm not proud of what I did. But I had a giant mansion with no food inside. What options did I have? I took the money." Eagle clapped a hand on my shoulder and pulled me close as we made our way back into the house. His breath smelled of cheap beer and regret. "Raymond Salach," he slurred, "I've got the ability to make you a very rich man." He slurped up a bubble of drool. "Where'm I sleeping? What the fuck, advocatus? Why did he set me up with this douche nozzle? A select clientele will find their way to you. Your job is to extract a fair payment. What possible reason could I have had for being in the eye of this shitstorm?" I wondered this as we staggered through a kitchen that was equipped with more appliances than I knew how to use. There had to be a mix-up somewhere down the line. I hadn't even read the list of rules. I stopped. A thought had crossed my mind, but I didn't like it. Still, there was no other apparent way to unite Advocatus's advice with the list of rules and this creeper who would be sleeping in my home. Was it the right call? I turned around to evaluate the guy. Eagle was pissing on my fridge. That's when I remembered more of Advocatus's advice. Follow the rules. Things may surprise you. "Oh, I get it, house. This is revenge for the fireplace, isn't it?" I asked, completely pissed. "Wah," Eagle responded as he drunkenly stumbled, soiling a long stretch of wall and floor. I said, "Pack your pecker back in port. I'm taking you up to your damn room." I'd intentionally avoided the third-floor hallway up to this point. The pressure increased as I slowly proceeded along it, like I was swimming ever deeper underwater. Eagle didn't seem to notice. The door at the end of the hall was open just a crack, a soft blue glow emitted from within. I didn't want to open the door. But, like every other survival instinct I'd had in the past 2 days, I ignored it. Nausea seeped through my pores as I stepped into the room. I kept my eyes glued to the wooden planks of the floor. "Here's your room. I have to go. Do you need anything?" I didn't know or care if the room had a bed, or furniture, or anything at all. I just wanted out of there. It smelled wrong, and bizarre memories floated back with incredibly twisted details. Eagle stood next to me and remained silent. I went quietly into the hall and closed the door behind me. I'm not proud of what I did. But I had a giant mansion with no food inside. What options did I have? I had taken his money while intending to screw him over. Whether or not the house shared my intentions was his problem now. I really didn't want to go back into my extra haunted room in search of the creepiest man I'd ever met. But when Eagle hadn't emerged by the next night, it became clear that I needed to head into the blue room in search of him. The hallway filled my ears with the same pressure as I approached. My eyes were tearing up by the time I reached the doorknob. It was unlocked. I kept my eyes pointed at the floor. As I stepped into the room, I didn't like waving my arms in front of me, but the thought of seeing was more terrifying than the notion of feeling, so I reached into the shadows. The air pressure in the room changed significantly as I stepped forward. It felt like I was outside, no echoes or reverberations matched my steps. And I was cold. My arm brushed up against a man, and I nearly voided my bowels. Assuming it was Eagle, I grabbed him and pulled forward. He followed stiltily, like he was unsure of how to use his knees. The door was farther away than I had remembered. Once we were back in the hallway, I shut the latch and finally raised my head to see if the correct strange man was by my side. My tightening throat stifled the scream. Eagle's hair had gone sheet white and was now pointing straight out in every direction. I think that he was staring at me, but I had no way of knowing. The pupils and irises had disappeared from his eyes. Only wide globs stared back at me.